as all of you gear up to go out into the real world and get a job, you can't go into it revved up with what your goals are. Of course, all of you have goals, but honestly, your employers don't really care. Because if they're going to hire you and pay you money, all you are to them is an investment. And so if I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, I better get a return on that amount. Otherwise, I'm wasting money and I'm losing money, which no business wants. So you need to go into that meeting. And I learned this firsthand. Not really, putting what you want on the table, but more focused on the value you offer, the value you bring to the table for them. And that is, I could not agree more. It is about your audience. It's not about you. This isn't about you, which is the irony of this session. It's not about you, it's about them, because they are going to hire you, pay you money, invest in you, work with you. It's about them. And so you need to have a strong sense of who you are. And I think every single person, I work a lot with TV hosts, I think every single person, every single brand, every single expert, all of you are experts, correct? Correct. You're supposed to say yes. Right, Phil, I'm an expert. And luckily, all of you are actually experts. You've all attended Full Sail, and you know a lot more than most people know. I work a lot with TV hosts, and I tell them, lucky for you guys, the term expert is pretty loose, They're not, yeah. So most of them, some of them, come from professional backgrounds. But the point is, every single one of you as experts are made up of an interesting ratio between two things, content and personality. You can never be one or the other. If you're just content, you're up against Google, Yahoo Answers, eHow. You're up against these information powerhouses, and you're never going to be able to compete with them because everything that someone needs is already on the internet in some way, shape, or form. You're never going to have something completely original, and that's okay. That's the wonderful thing about this. So you need to marry your content with personality. And every single one of you is a different ratio of those two things. Someone like Chelsea Handler is, I think, 90% personality, 10% content. And that may even be generous on the content side. Someone like Anderson Cooper, is what? 90% content, 10% personality. And so when they decided to give him a daytime talk show to reveal his personality, clearly they didn't talk to Phil, because Phil would have said, well, that's never going to work because that's not his strength. And guess what? It got canceled. No one watched it, right? Don't give Anderson Cooper a talk show. Let him sit behind a teleprompter and deliver the news, because that's what he does well. He's a content guy. And so all of you need to know what your ratio is, because that's going to determine the best suited opportunities for you moving forward.
I think it's good to have personality, too. I think a lot of times people think, oh, well, this is my professional image, right? And super stuffy professional people nobody cares about, right? Like, seriously, do you guys love to follow really ultra professional, closed up, never revealing, people? Not really, right? We like people with personality. So I think it's okay to have personality as long as it's not too offensive, unless that's your personal brand. Just keep in mind that most of you, if not all of you, want to be hired by someone at some point, right? So you have to know where the threshold of offense comes in when it comes to your employers. Employers also look for transparency. They want to see that you have some sort of image. And I know, like, when we host guest speakers here on campus, for example, we want some sort of documentation or proof somewhere to show that that person is who they say they are, right? So I think it's good to have content that's put out there and to have some sort of transparency online so that employers know who you are as a person, both professionally and personally, to a certain extent. I think that all that helps build your brand and build confidence that they're making the right decision when they hire you, right? So I think it's good to have personality.
I'm curious to know how many of you, by show of hands, are on Twitter? And you want to know something crazy? How many of you are on LinkedIn? You want to know the craziest thing? The first time I heard about LinkedIn, and I now do this professionally, but Pat Bishop, the love of my life, who's sitting in this room, Pat Bishop from Full Sail, she's one of my BFFs. Hey, Pat. You knew you were going to get a shout out. You know, I found out about LinkedIn through Pat Bishop when she came to our class at Full Sail and said, if you're not on this, get on it. I went home, I signed up for LinkedIn, I'm on it, and it led to opportunities. Same with Twitter. All of you should be on Twitter. You should be tweeting multiple times a day, not just about yourselves. I have a whole tweet system I can teach you. You can email me or go to my blog. But let me just teach you really quick. This is just so on topic. We're talking about incorporating your personality into your brand. Your Twitter bios, jazz it up a little. Like, I love long walks on the beach, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Here's the very specific way of how to write your Twitter bio. Very quickly, the 2 sentences. Write this down. Take notes. Your Twitter bio should be 2 sentences. The first one should answer who you are and why I should care. The second sentence should give me some indication of your personality, going back to this juggling of the in-person interaction with replicating that as closely as possible on the internet. So mine is brand and social media strategist for TV hosts, public figures, and entrepreneurs. That's what I do. That's why you should care. If you don't, move along. And then the second sentence is, if your baby's ugly, it's my job to tell you. Which some people love, others don't, and I know if they don't resonate with that, they're not gonna like me. But you know what that does is it starts a conversation. I get about 10 tweets a day from people that find me, seriously, saying, you know, they use that as a excuse to start a conversation. But the point is, you get my personality. It's not just boring old credentials. No one cares about that. What's your perspective? What's your opinion? You know, you have to incorporate those elements into your bio and throughout your social media bios as well.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I have to update my Twitter bio right now. But while we're on the subject of Twitter, and I meant to do this earlier, can you all share your Twitter handles with the audience?
The Brandisher is my Twitter handle.
Spell it out.
T-H-E, Brandisher, B-R-A-N-D-I-S-H-E-R.
Oh, mine is Heather_Torres. Torres is Torres.
And mine is Phil Pallen, at Phil Pallen, Philpallen.
And mine is RCROLL. So we were talking about some specific channels there, but if you are a student and you are sort of in the process of building your personal brand, you know, there are literally hundreds of different social media sites out there. Where would you recommend focusing your efforts on to start?
Well, I'll tell you some of my favorite ones. I think Twitter is a must-have if you guys are going in the entertainment industry for sure, because everybody's on Twitter these days, and it's growing in popularity, so I think that's a big one. Facebook is good too. You can have a Facebook page set up, and there is a difference between profiles and pages, as many of you may know. So you can have a very public page, especially if you're planning on being a celebrity or a musician or an artist or something along those lines. I think it's also a good idea to have a digital profile or portfolio as well, where you set up your own website, where you showcase your skills and your abilities. And this is just a great add-on to share with potential employers because they can go to this website and they can see a visual representation of who you are. So I think that's also very important. I think those are my top 3 things that I recommend all of you guys having as minimum. Any of you guys have any other things that you think are a must-have?
Well, I think I agree with those, and I would just add that if you don't currently, or even if you do currently use social media a lot, I would just try to start with a couple and manage those, and then if you can add others, because what you don't want to do is create a whole bunch of different profiles on different mediums and then ignore them, because by not saying something, that says something. So you just want to be careful how you do that. You want to make sure that you have time to manage these different presences that you have on various social media.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page.
Mind meld, right?
Rather than being mediocre at 10 different platforms, be a rock star on 3. And those 3 are going to depend on what your brand is. And you touched on some great ones. I think LinkedIn is an important one until you find a job. Twitter is, and I'll treat you all like clients. And we isolate our top 3, maybe 4, but usually 3 platforms to become rock stars on. Twitter is always number 1. If you're a comedian, you're a speaker, a personality, YouTube is really important. Instagram or Pinterest, if you have a visual brand. If you work on set somewhere where you've got celebrities and stuff, Instagram is great because Instagram should always act as us kind of hanging out in your back pocket, getting an inside look into a certain world where we feel like we're included. The most important thing is that every single social media platform that you have has a specific purpose. So I'll give all of you an example. Pinterest, if you need a good example of branding, logos, business cards, website, packaging, document design for your resumes, go to my Pinterest, pinterest.com/Phil Pallen, where I curate examples of fantastic branding. I've now given that social media platform a purpose. I don't just update it with my favorite destinations to vacation. No one cares about that. This isn't about me. It's about you. And so all of you should go to my Pinterest and get an idea for, what you should do with your logo, what you should do with your website. I put the time into curating it. Go look at it. Save some time. Don't reinvent the wheel. McDonald's spends millions of dollars on advertising every single year and millions of dollars figuring out where they're going to put their next restaurant. I think I learned this actually from Ken DiGilio in branding back in the day. I still use this. It's just great. And Burger King spends 0. Why does Burger King spend 0? Because they just put a restaurant wherever McDonald's goes. Don't reinvent the wheel, people. It's already been done. It's already out there. Learn from other people's budgets, mistakes, and learn from the work that they do and the money they spend.
Yeah, I think it's important too to know where your audience is. Know who your target market is and who you're trying to reach, and then go to that platform and know where they are. So that's my last 2 cents.
All right, so speaking of knowing your audience, if you're a student, most likely you're ultimately looking for a job. And there are a lot of great examples of people who have used social media to find jobs. And one of my personal favorites is this copywriter from a couple years ago who he was looking for a new job. He was working for a couple of years out of college and he was bored. So he decided to take out an ad on Google where he was targeting specific creative directors at ad agencies in New York. So when they Googled their names, and you all do it, I know, and they do it too, right? So when they would Google their names, they would see this ad from him that said, hey, whatever your name is, Googling yourself is a lot of fun. Hiring me is fun too. He did this for 5 different people. He got responses from 4 of them. He got 2 interviews, and he got a job out of it. So there are lots of ways to be creative using social media. Do you have any examples of that?
I can give you an example of getting noticed, I think, is really the biggest challenge. Once you get noticed, once you're face-to-face with someone, you can build that personal rapport. And as long as you do a good job of that, there's a good chance if that person can hire you, they'll connect you with someone that can. I know kind of this area of getting noticed online from 2 different perspectives. And let's use Twitter, since we've been talking about that as a specific example. When you tweet Lori Grenier, my client on Shark Tank, who watches Shark Tank? You should all watch it. Yeah, new episode on Friday. When you tweet Lori, and you say, OMG, love you, you're the best shark, heart, heart. She's not gonna retweet that because it's gonna make her look obsessed with herself. But if you tweet what I call a networking effort tweet, when you tweet out something that shows some depth, so you say, loved your perspective on entrepreneurship, and then you link to the article that she was in or quoted in. Or you're on the plane and you're going through a magazine. I'm such a nerd on the airplane because I bring all of my magazines with highlighters. Loser. And I'm literally going through them, highlighting names of people that are mentioned, highlighting names of authors, and then I go and find them on Twitter and send them a tweet. This practice, for me, I've been retweeted by BMW, Chipotle, not even on purpose, but when you show some substance in your approach and not just me, because we shut down. I don't even want to know, but if you bring value to the table, you show some depth, that tweet, loved your perspective on this, there's a very good chance Laura's going to retweet that to 200,000 people with the click of a button because you've put in some thought into, what would help her. So I don't think it's crazy for you to use Twitter as a tool to meet new people. Reach out to someone you don't know every single day. Start a conversation. If all of the elements are in place, your website, your bio, consistent social media content that I can glance at and get a sense of what your brand is, if all of those pieces of the puzzle are in place, something good is going to happen.
Great, and so that was a great segue, because there was one other thing that I wanted to mention about using social media in that way. And there's an internet marketing person whose name is Tommy Walker who calls it selective stalking, right? It's you're looking for the people in your industry who have a unique perspective, who have something good to share, and you connect with them. And it's surprisingly easy to do that on Twitter, I think. But we've been really focusing a lot about what do you do online. So is your personal brand just online?
No. Your personal brand is not just online. I think your personal brand of who you are as a person, and we touched on this earlier, who you are as a person face-to-face should transfer to the online environment. But every interaction that you guys have and every social situation represents your personal brand. So the way you dress, the things you say, the conversations you have, all of that's part of who you are and the way that you've branded yourself. So you have to be aware of those things at all times. It's a little scary when you think about it, right?
It is. We got on a conference call on Monday, and after we chatted about what we're going to talk about up here, Rob asked me what boots I was going to wear. You remember my boots from last? So that's my brand, right? I wear boots. I don't wear a suit unless someone's paying me a lot of money. I wear boots. I'm pretty casual, but that, I buy all my clothes from one store because I know that represents my brand, my appearance, my personality. All of that is an extension of your personal brand. Being aware of what that is so true. All of those things you mentioned are a huge part of it in addition to online. Online is just convenient for people. That's the first place they go because they're lazy, to find dirt about you. So that's why it's important we spend a lot of time talking about it.
And along those same lines, I think students, everybody actually forgets this. Your email address says something about you. So if it's some crazy cat lady 5, that says something about your personal brand. Also, your voicemail announcement on your phone, if it's something weird or crazy, which is fine if that's your brand, but just keep in mind, you forget those things, because it's fun to put a crazy voicemail announcement, whatever. That's nice, unless it's a potential employer calling you and then they think, that says something. So think of those things that you might not think of, but that they do say something, because those are touch points that your audience is coming into contact with your brand through your email address, your Twitter handle, your voice announcement. Every single thing that you do says something about your brand. So just try to remember those things that aren't so obvious sometimes.
Great, thank you. And Phil, they can't see your boot. You're going to have to stick your feet out on them.
I'll do a fashion show after.
So let's talk a little bit about the idea of if you are meeting someone in person and, say it's someone that you might want to talk to about a potential job or something, just the idea of an elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually have my students do this as an exercise, is they create a personal branding statement. So it might be good to just have that kind of, in your mind of how you would convey your personal brand. So it's a very short, an elevator pitch, a very short, maybe 3 sentences, maybe 2 sentences, kind of like what you might put on your Twitter profile, to describe your brand passion, your brand attributes, your differentiation point, what makes you stand out from others in your industry, some way to convey something important about you to any potential employer or anyone that you come into contact with. But it should be short, memorable, and obviously impactful.
Coming up with your brand is not something that you can normally do overnight. It's something that you're going to have to think about. It should be your passion combined with a need in the industry. You've done research. An idea is fantastic, but an idea is so much better when paired with research. So you need to isolate a need in the industry. For me, I graduated from Full Sail, and I noticed there were two separate audiences of people. There were social media experts who, for the most part, were super lame. They were lame. They had no sense of branding. Their stuff looked ugly. Their websites were ugly. It was like, ugh. And then we have a whole separate audience of branding experts, and these are people who can make everything look pretty, but then have no idea what to do with it. And so for me, I found a need in the market, in the industry, where we needed someone who could help build the brand, but then promote it using intelligent social media strategy. So I figured out my brand by, figuring out what I love to do, what my passions are, and then, marrying that with a need. And that's something for all of you to think about. I have a brand questionnaire that I give to clients when I actually have a session called a brand audit. That's what I mean. You and I are like long-lost siblings. And so a few questions on that. You can write these down and think about them. What are 3 things I wouldn't know by just looking at you? Tell me 3 things you're passionate about. If you had to write a book, what would it be about? If you had to film 3 webisodes tomorrow, what could you film them on? Those are just a few questions I have from the questionnaire off the top of my head that help me pinpoint the brand of my client or host or whoever I'm working with.
So I just want to highlight something too. Career development is awesome. You guys should all make really good friends with career development. But I was meeting with them the other day. We were actually having a powwow about LinkedIn. We were talking about how we could prepare the students better to make sure that they were ready when they graduated to really put their best professional, foot forward. And a couple tips that they had mentioned, and part of this is with the personal branding statement and your elevator pitch and stuff like that. While it's great that you guys are students, you don't necessarily have to brand yourself as a student right now. You guys need to look to the future and really think of what you want to be in the grand scheme of things and how you, like Phil said, how you can really fulfill a need within the market, and bring in your personality, bring in your interests, things of that nature, but always think in large scale terms of how you want to brand yourself and how you're going to portray yourself. So even though you may not have all the experience to back yourself up, you can still brand yourself as an expert in what you're striving to be, okay? And the other tip that they had mentioned is that you guys get on there as quickly as possible and have a goal by graduation to have more than 500 contacts. And I know that seems impossible right now at the moment, but if you guys work at it and you work connections with people in the industry or Full Sail grads, there's thousands of Full Sail grads on there that are just eager to get to know you guys as students and things of that nature. So make those connections with anybody and everybody that you can find on LinkedIn and have that goal. But sorry, that was a bit of a detour. But don't be afraid to brand yourself as what you strive to be long-term. Don't pigeonhole yourself as being a student at the moment, even though that might be what you are. So
I just finished designing a logo for an interior designer that just got out of school. And you look at her logo and you think that she's been in the industry for at least 15 years. And it was all on purpose. That's really good advice.
So we've been talking a lot about kind of identifying a need that's out there so that you can reach the right audience. But how do you really go about doing that?
Research. Research. And you guys will see stuff pop up. As you guys are, and many of you guys are researching companies and things of that nature while you're in school. But if you see, for the example you gave of someone having a really bad website or horrible branding, we're all marketing people, so that's what stands out to us as a need in many cases. But if you see that there's a need there, don't be afraid to approach that company or approach those people to talk to them about the need that you can fulfill. If you can do it better, then that's some value you can bring to the table. But this is in any type of industry. I mean, it doesn't matter if you go the marketing route or some other route. If you see that there's a need there just by coming across opportunities, I mean, look for ways to improve things. And that's the need you'll fulfill.
One idea, and this is what my idea that I forgot, you were talking about making connections with influencers, and one way to do it as students. So if you email me and say, Phil, I want to talk to you about my goals and dreams of working in the entertainment industry, if I have a really busy week, I may not be able to make that happen. But if you say, Phil, I want to interview you for my blog, I want to feature you on my blog, oh, honey, you just got put to the front of the line. And it's no different. You approach it as, if you approach it as, I want to have a conversation about me, I'm kind of like, oh, I just don't have time for you right now. Maybe I do, but a lot of times I don't because I'm busy. But if you simply interview the person, we're going to talk before the interview and after the interview, and I have never, ever said no to an interview. And if someone does, you don't want to meet them anyways. Regardless if you have 3 followers, I'm not even going to look at that. If you want to interview me, discuss brand strategy, discuss whatever my expertise is, we've now built a rapport and you're on my radar. Your job is not just to go online and find the job postings and apply to them like 10,000 other people do. Anything in LA, New York, the first thing they do is they look at your address on your resume, and if you're not in LA or New York, then they throw it out. Every employer is looking for an excuse to throw your resume in the trash can because they receive such an insane number. The easier it is to apply for a job, the more resumes they receive. And they're looking for any excuse to throw it out because a lot of people apply for these jobs because they seem glamorous. And unfortunately, you're up against that. So you need to think through your approach and make sure they have no excuse to throw it out.
And I think that approach of doing it as an interview is a great way to stand out from everyone else who's going to call and say, oh, can I just talk to you about it? And then he doesn't have time. So that speaks to that, how to differentiate yourself from everyone else that you're competing with.
We had a graduate, she graduated about a year ago. Her name's Alyssa McCraw. And Alyssa was an awesome student. I mean, she wasn't an A student, but she was a very eager to learn, hands-on student. And she probably did make some A's too, but I just remember her standing out. But she landed an internship with Big Machine Records, which is Taylor Swift's record label in Nashville. And she, just like Phil, she packed up her car and she moved up there like immediately after graduation. She did that and she landed that internship all because of her online presence, okay? 100% her online presence. She was able to develop an amazing resume, which she delivered in person, but at the same time, she was also developing a million different profiles and developing content, and every assignment that she took on, she tried to apply it to what can I take from this assignment to best prepare me for life after graduation. And so now she's actually based out of Texas after she left Big Machine after that, and she's now running a talent agency that works with really big names like Demi Lovato and, what's Ashley Simpson, Ashley Simpson, because that's Jessica Simpson's sister, yes. So she works with all these different clients, and all because she was able to work on these things while she was here. And so that's the one thing I want to encourage you. Many of you might think, oh, well, graduation's like a year and a half away. I got plenty of time. I don't need to worry about this stuff, whatever, I'll get to it when I get to it. But I would look for every opportunity that you have every single day, okay? Just like if you were hired by a company to help develop their brand image, what are the things that you can do every day? What's one project you can take on to accomplish that day or that week to help build your presence and your image and have a whole portfolio of information so that you can land that dream job upon graduation?
And I would say, too, to go along with that, don't get so hung up on how much does this job pay? The opportunity might be an unpaid internship that then leads to something amazing. But if you ignore it because it's unpaid, oh, I can't do that, I expect whatever, you won't have that opportunity. So if she hadn't taken that, it wouldn't have led to those things. So just try not to overlook things based solely on that one aspect of pay.
It's so tough. This is probably the thing I hate the most about the industry is that it's okay to have unpaid internships. It's like, it's not okay to have, like sweatshops, but it's okay in the entertainment industry to hire people and not pay them. I will never, ever, for the life of me, have an unpaid intern, ever. I think it's so wrong, but unfortunately, this is the way the industry is, and there's nothing we can do about it. I think unpaid internships are a way to get in and prove yourself. If you don't like your boss, you don't like the company, then get the hell out, because they're not paying you. You got no reason to be there. But I mean, 9 times out of 10, when you hear about students, they go and do an unpaid internship and it leads to a job. If they do a good job, they work hard. And it's really just an excuse to be in the same room with influencers and people who have networks. And if they can't hire you, they're going to feel bad. If you have worked for them for 3 months or 1 month, whatever it is, and they haven't paid you, the least they can do is connect you with someone that can.
Great. Well, thank you, panelists. We've really covered a lot of ground here today, and now it's time for us to open up the floor for some questions from the audience. So, anyone have a question? You have down here, because that's the closest person I can see, and the furthest person from you.
I can only see the first row.
Where was it? Right here?
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Hello. Once again, thanks for coming by. It's been great just listening to you guys' advice on everything. I'm about to graduate in June, and as a way of differentiating myself from the crowd with the social media and everything like that, I was wondering, what's your thoughts on video resumes? Sorry about that.
I think for the right industry, depending upon where you're going to end up, I think they're great. I wouldn't necessarily send a video resume as your first point of contact. Many jobs won't even accept it in that format, but it's like an awesome follow-up, like in a thank you email, like, thanks for the interview today, it was great. Why don't you check out my video resume, or to have it as a piece on your digital, portfolio, to have that on your website. I think that's a great thing, a great place to have it. I think it just depends on the industry, though, and where you're going to end up. There might be some industries that it won't necessarily make sense for, but...
Well, in particular, I'm looking into YouTube in the new media space as just a growing advertising for YouTube and everything, like effectively showing that I can use YouTube and I know production, I know marketing
Absolutely.
and stuff like that in that space, and using that, like that product and the fact that it's made in a certain way to show that expertise.
Then that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect for what you want to do.
Well, I work with all kinds of YouTube networks, maker studios. I mean, there's so many of them in LA, and I've come in contact with a lot of them. But I think even more than a video resume per se, they're going to want to go to your YouTube channel and see subscribers and see videos published. So I would treat
I'm
those.
working on that too.
Yeah, I would treat those as your resume. When I'm working with TV hosts, it's a bit different. I say you have to have 2 video elements. You have to have your reel, which shows us your entire career, the best moments of what you've built. And a lot of times, if someone's just starting out, they create a fake reel. They go and film this stuff and pretend that they're in these environments. And that's fine too. They just want to see your best moments on camera. But then you also need to pair it with ongoing webisodes, video content. When we mentioned doing those interviews with people, you could do a Google Hangout. I am all about Google Hangouts because it's free, first of all, and it's like Skype, but you enable the Hangout on air and it gets pushed to your YouTube channel. How cool is that? And it's free, and you can Skype in, or you have someone across the world and do a Google Hangout with them. So I think just showing a range of different kinds of video, showing them the range of what you can do is cool, because then they look at that and go, oh, he doesn't just make, sketches, little skits, he can also do interviews and that type of thing, just showing your range. I think that altogether, if you position it a certain way, will essentially be even more powerful than a resume. You still want to have something on paper for the people who don't like new ideas, like you said, but yeah, all of those elements, that's really important if you want to get into that world.
Right, and there's a YouTube panel on Friday at 11, which I happen to be moderating, but that's how I'm that. All right.
I just also want to highlight that quality is so important. If it's bad quality, then don't want it there, okay? Like, that's so important because you can totally ruin the perception of your brand just by having poor quality content. So if you're great at doing videos, that's wonderful, and you should use that to showcase your skill. But if you're not great at it, then I wouldn't do it. So
Good point.
Good point. Other questions? There's one right behind you.
Hi, I have a name that quite a few people have made successful brands off of. How do you recommend trying to cut through the clutter of the other people with your names? And do you ever recommend pseudonyms for people just starting out?
Ooh. Ooh.
Well, interesting. I was
go
just going to
ahead.
say, interestingly, that's why my Twitter handle is The Brandisher, because Diane Diaz is extremely common, so I couldn't get it. So I love branding, so that's why I came up with that. So it could be effective. Sorry, go
And
ahead.
we actually have a course director in the internet marketing program who has the same name as a porn star. So, that's also difficult. But what she did to brand herself was to use her middle name too. So all of her profiles have her entire name. So that's another opportunity.
I've come across both of those with clients, both of those dilemmas. And it's so interesting because I was about to say we created a Twitter handle for someone with a pretty ordinary name, and we were able to get It's Michelle instead of, Michelle and then last name. So just get creative about different options, and you can check on Twitter, you can see real time. You just go into your settings where it says your username, and usually domains, .coms, and Twitter handles are the hardest to get. If you can secure both of those, then there's a good chance you'll be able to get it on Instagram, Google, all of the other platforms. I think your goal, more than it being true to your name, I mean, it's a blessing for me that I have a unique name because I was able to secure my handle. But if you can come up with something branded, whether it be your middle name, something, it's, something to make that unique, then if you get it on as a .com, buy a domain, $10 a year, .com, and the Twitter handle, then you're good. Usually you're in the clear, you're almost there. But I think the key is to keep those consistent
Yes.
because no one's going to look for different variations of that across the platforms. And there's a good chance they'll be trying to tweet you or tag you on Instagram and they're tagging the wrong person. So you can find something unique. It takes time and lots of trial and error, but a good way to determine if you're in the right direction is check on a .com. If it's available, get it. Twitter, if it's available as a handle, 15 characters or less, then get it. And that's usually what you stick with.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, and there's a site called knowem.com, knowem.com, that will actually check if your desired handle is available across something like 500 different social media sites. So that's an easy way to see where is this available. There's a paid service to it too, where you can actually have them subscribe you to all of those sites, but to just check is free, or at least was the last time I checked. More questions?
There's one in the back.
Oh, way in the back.
Worked out. Hey guys, how do you feel about the social media marketing automation sites, tools like BuzzFork, that allow you to launch small-scale marketing campaigns that are targeted to certain demographics? Do you guys use those tools, or do you recommend them for your clients?
Go ahead.
I don't like them because they feel inauthentic. I would rather take the few extra seconds it takes to schedule it. I just don't. I ignore all of those tweets that come in. I'm not a fan of writing tweets as headlines either. Tweets are bits of thought. They should be a sentence, not all capitalized. It's like so obnoxious, and I just see, I've had a few students that have used those, and I just don't think it's working because it just contributes to the mass of stuff that we ignore. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think I'd rather see you put in the time and effort to even scale down the quantity and focus on quality. I think it's going to help you. And if you switch up your tweets, every day you can have 4 tweets, or if that seems low, you can double it. One tweet should be about you, what I call a website link or self-promotion. One can be a quick question, engage your audience. The other is industry buzz. Show us that you're an expert in the industry. A statistic, a fact, a link to something going on in the industry, and then a networking effort. Stick to that as opposed to those crazy automated, sharing your blog post from 3 years ago that no one cares about. I'm just not a fan of those.
Cool.
Well, I would say personally for me, I find sometimes that not only do you have to know your audience, but you have to know what the platform is. And Facebook is different than Twitter, is different than Google+. And sometimes when you automate those sort of things, when I post to Twitter, it posts in all these other things. I don't really want to see your tweets on my Facebook feed. And because it feels like it's a different party, so it would be, you're at a formal cocktail party or a professional thing versus something more personal. So I agree with Phil that too much automation, while it can be convenient, it ends up sort of diminishing the value of your brand because it's clear to everyone, when people's tweets show up in my Facebook, I know that it's a tweet and I know that they didn't intentionally post that to Facebook.
Yeah, because, I'm sorry.
You go.
No, go ahead.
As I say, you have to engage on a personal level with people. Like if you go to someone's Twitter page and all it is these blasts of content and information, and they're not engaging with anybody on that platform, it's like, who's going to want to follow that person, right? You want to follow people that actually engage on a personal level in some way. So, well, I think they can be helpful in some ways. Like if you're managing multiple social media accounts and you are in charge of, that's a great shortcut, right? Like Hootsuite, and there's a whole list of different platforms that do that. But above and beyond that, you have to take a moment to engage personally and not just use that as the only source of marketing, in my opinion.
Right, because the engagement is what it's all about. Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are, all you're doing is building an experience with your brand. That's all it is. So if it doesn't build an experience, if your audience ignores it because it doesn't seem authentic or it seems impersonal or whatever, then you're not building an experience. So it's, even though you're saving time, it's almost wasted effort. So I think that the engagement is the key.
No auto DMs, auto direct messages. I'll instantly hate you.
Those are bad.
And then another thing is when you read an article and you want to tweet about it, you push the tweet this button, rewrite it. You don't have to, they're trying to micromanage you by writing the tweet for you, but don't just send it out as they've written it, because they're not you. This is your opportunity to say what the article's about, but then also add your personality, even if that's one word, to say, amazing, this is insane, say something so that we get that branded element in there, and you're more likely to get engagement out of that because it feels less like a robot, right? You've taken a few extra seconds to write it in your brand voice, that tweet, not just send it out how they've written it for you, and that's going to pay off for you.
And I would add one other thing about engagement is that when you're using social media, it's not just about you putting stuff out there, but it's also about you paying attention to the stuff that's coming back, especially if people are responding to you. Mm-hmm. And you see this happen a lot. Someone posts something and then someone responds to it in some way, and the conversation ends there. It's like being at a party, walking up to someone and asking them a question and then walking away. So it's just rude to do that. All right, well, thank you everyone again for being here.